Supreme Commander Kale of the Cylosian Hegemony stood upon the crystalline bridge of his flagship, the Clarity of Purpose. The vessel was less a machine and more a work of art. Its corridors and chambers groaned from flawless, resonant crystals that chimed softly with the thrum of the dimensional drives. Before him, suspended in the void like a polished gemstone, was the planet designated Veridian Prime. It was a swirl of impossible blues and vibrant greens, a chaotic splash of color in the sterile perfection of space. Kale's multifaceted eyes, each a perfect hexagon of deep violet, refracted the light from the view screen. He did not need the data streaming from his tactical officers to understand what he was seeing. This was his 18th world to bring into the ordered fold of the hegemony. The pattern was always the same, a beautiful, predictable sequence of events. Arrive in overwhelming force. Extend the offer of enlightened governance under the hegemony. Demand surrender. When the inevitable refusal came, fight a clean, geometric war according to the Galactic Covenant of Warfare. Claim victory and bring order to chaos. It was simple. It was clean. It was the way the universe was meant to function. Veridian Prime was a human colony, an offshoot of a species called Earthlings. His long-range scouts had painted a picture of a disorganized but spirited people. They had other colonies, but a primary one was here, a world of sprawling farms and modest, inefficient cities nestled in vast wilderness. They would be easy to defeat. Their resistance would be a brief, disharmonious chord before the symphony of hegemony control began to play. Kale raised a hand, his fingers not of flesh but of interlocking, articulated crystal, and gestured to his communications officer. Open a channel to the primary settlement, the one they call Olympus Dot. The air before him shimmered, and a face resolved into focus. It was a human female, her features sharp and defined by a life Kale could only imagine. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, practical style, and she wore a uniform that seemed more functional than ceremonial, its fabric showing signs of wear and repair. Her eyes, a shade of brown Kale's internal database labeled umber, held no fear, only a weary resolve. "I am Colonel Eva Rostova of the Veridian Colonial Defense," the woman said, her voice steady, devoid of the tremor Kale had come to expect from primitive leaders. "You have entered the sovereign space of the Veridian colony. State your purpose." Kale straightened his tall, angular frame. His crystalline body caught the internal lights of the bridge, scattering rainbows across the deck. "I am Supreme Commander Kale of the Cylosian Hegemony. Your world and all its worlds now fall under our protection. You will surrender your colony and its people. We conduct all operations in accordance with the Galactic Covenant of Warfare. You have one standard rotation to consider the wisdom of this path." Colonel Rostova's expression did not change. "The Galactic Covenant of Warfare? I'm afraid that's not required reading out here. We've never heard of it, but I can save you the wait. We don't surrender. Not to you, not to anyone. If you want this world, you'll have to come down here and take it." The screen went dark, plunging the bridge back into its soft, chiming silence. Kale blinked his 6 eyes in a slow, rhythmic pattern of genuine surprise. In 3 centuries of service, in 17 conquests, no species had ever refused to acknowledge the Covenant. It was the foundation of interstellar conflict, the code that made war a structured, manageable, and ultimately civilized affair. It ensured that conflicts were contests of strategy and might, not barbaric slaughters. Both sides would array their forces in designated zones. They would fight on open ground, with clear declarations of intent. The losing side would surrender with honor, and its people would be integrated, their culture preserved as a quaint footnote in hegemony archives. That was how civilized beings conducted the necessary business of war. "Commander Lyric," Kale said, turning to his second-in-command. Lyric, whose crystalline form was a more muted gray, stepped forward. "Supreme Commander, prepare the landing forces. We will proceed as per Covenant Article 4, planetary incursion." "Understood," Lyric said. "Their refusal is illogical. They invite their own destruction." "Perhaps they do not comprehend the alternative," Kale mused, though a seed of unease had been planted in his otherwise ordered consciousness. These humans were already proving to be unpredictable. Chapter 2, The Empty Field. 3 hours later, Kale led his landing forces to the surface of Veridian Prime. His ships, sleek and angular, descended with a silent grace that disturbed the air, creating perfect circles of flattened grass in a large meadow outside the main city of Olympus. According to the Covenant, the humans should now be assembling their army, marching in formation to meet him in the open field he had chosen as a battleground. It was a place of honor, a blank canvas upon which the art of war could be painted. Instead, nothing happened. The meadow was silent. The city in the distance stood quiet, its lights twinkling innocently in the afternoon sun. Kale's troops disembarked, their movements perfectly synchronized, their crystalline armor gleaming. They formed a vast, geometric shape on the field, a living tessellation of soldiers and war machines. They stood, weapons at the ready, for 6 standard hours. Still, no human army appeared. The silence was more unnerving than any battle cry. It was a violation of the script. Supreme Commander, Lyric's voice crackled in Kale's calm. Our long-range sensors detect no significant troop movements. They are going about their business. We are picking up civilian vehicle traffic, but nothing that resembles a military response. Kale's internal processors whirred, analyzing possibilities. Cowardice? A profound misunderstanding of military protocol? Or something else entirely? They may be fortifying their city, he speculated, hiding behind their walls like frightened animals. It is a dishonorable but not unheard of tactic. Finally, his patience, honed by centuries of discipline, reached its limit. Order the advance. We will approach the city and establish perimeter. Perhaps the proximity of a hegemony army will remind them of their duty to engage properly. The formation began to move, a silent, glittering tide rolling across the meadow toward the city. It was then that the war began, not with clarion call or a formal charge, but with a deep, guttural thump that came from beneath the very ground they marched on. The lead Cylosian transport, a vehicle that could level a mountain, hit something buried in the dirt road. The explosion was massive, unsophisticated, and utterly devastating. The transport flipped into the air, its crystalline frame shattering into a million glittering shards. The soldiers around it were thrown like discarded toys. Before the echoes of the blast had faded, rifle fire erupted from the buildings on the city's edge. But Kale could not see the shooters. The shots came from windows that seemed empty, from rooftops that appeared deserted. The fire was erratic, aimed not at killing soldiers but at their equipment, targeting the joints in their armor, the lenses of their optical sensors. Where is their army? Lyric demanded over the comm, his voice for the first time showing a flicker of something other than calm logic. This is not a battle. It is an ambush. I do not know, Kale replied, his mind racing. Perhaps they are all cowards, hiding in the shadows. But as his forces moved deeper into the city, strange things kept happening. A Cylosian patrol would enter a building, their sensors showing to be empty, only to have explosive charges detonate behind them, blocking their exit. A squad would secure a city block, only to find that all the water mains had been opened, flooding the streets and rendering their heavy equipment useless. The humans seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Chapter 3, The Mechanics of Defiance. Lisa Stone crouched behind a pile of derelict farming equipment, the smell of grease and fertile earth filling her nostrils. Before the Cylosians arrived, she had been the head mechanic for the Olympus Agricultural Cooperative. She knew the inner workings of every tractor, harvester, and irrigation system for 100 clicks. Now, she used that knowledge to build bombs from fertilizer, diesel fuel, and spare parts. She watched a squad of Cylosian soldiers march past her hiding spot. They moved with an eerie, inhuman precision, their forms perfectly aligned, their steps in unison. They looked like they were on parade, not a battlefield. It was both beautiful and terrifying. Lisa waited until the center of the squad was adjacent to the old combine harvester she'd been working on for 2 days. She pressed a small, modified remote in her hand. The blast, contained and focused, knocked down 3 of the aliens. Their crystalline armor cracked, and they fell in a clatter of limbs. The others dove for cover, their movements suddenly clumsy, their perfect formation broken. But Lisa was already gone. She had crawled through a drainage pipe, a pipe she herself had helped install, that led to the basement of the next building. This was not how the Cylosians fought wars. Kale's intelligence reports were clear on that. They stood and faced their enemies. They announced their attacks. They gave warnings before they struck. These humans did none of those things. Sergeant Marcus Thorne had a different approach. He was old-school colonial defense, a man who believed in direct action, but he was also a pragmatist. He had taken 6 volunteers and 3 civilian pickup trucks. They mounted hunting rifles on the truck beds and welded scrap metal plates to the doors. They called their unit the Gopher Squad. They drove fast around the Cylosian positions, sticking to the winding alleyways the larger alien vehicles couldn't navigate. They would stop, fire a few armor-piercing rounds at the aliens' less protected rear sections, then speed away before the Cylosians could bring their superior weapons to bear. "This isn't fair fighting," one of Thorne's men, a young farmer named Finn, said as they sped away from another hit-and-run attack. Thorne, a grim scar running down his left cheek, laughed without humor. "Fair? They came to our home to kill us and take our land. There is nothing fair about that. The only thing that matters is that they go home, or we do, and I don't plan on going anywhere." The Cylosians had rules about vehicles in combat. Military vehicles fought military vehicles. Civilian vehicles were non-combatants. But the humans seemed to use anything they could find. Farm trucks became mobile weapons platforms. Construction excavators became mobile shields. Even children's bicycles, ridden through the labyrinthine back alleys, carried coded messages between human fighters. Chapter 4, The War Below. Colonel Eva Rostova sat in her command post, located 3 levels beneath the city's central shopping mall. It was damp, smelled of concrete and recycled air, and the lighting flickered, but it was secure. She looked at a holographic table displaying reports from her scattered units. The aliens were getting frustrated, and frustration led to mistakes. "They keep sending messages on open channels," reported Lieutenant Dan Rogers, a former logistics officer who now coordinated the civilian resistance. "They're demanding we cease these dishonorable tactics and engage in a formal battle as per the Covenant." "They sound confused." Rostova shook her head, a wry smile touching her lips. "That's the stupidest thing I ever heard. Why would we make it easy for them to kill us? They want a chess game. We're giving them a bar fight in a dark room with broken bottles." She had a plan that would really confuse the aliens. She keyed a comm channel. "Sergeant Thorne, report to command, and bring your white flag team." That evening, Marcus Thorne and 12 of his most trusted volunteers approached a Cylosian checkpoint that had been established at a major intersection. They carried white bed sheets tied to sticks and wore their civilian clothes over their body armor. The Cylosian soldiers, seeing the universal symbol of surrender, lowered their weapons, their crystalline forms relaxing. They believed the humans were finally coming to their senses. "We wish to negotiate." Thorne called out, his voice rough but clear. The Cylosian commander, being whose form was a more complex, multifaceted crystal than a standard soldier, stepped forward. Its light-based communication, translated by the humans' capture devices, projected into their minds. "Finally, you understand proper warfare. We can discuss the terms of your surrender. The hegemony shows mercy to those who see reason." Thorne and his team walked closer, hidden under their civilian clothes. Each human carried a satchel charge, a powerful explosive Lisa Stone had designed using mining equipment and alien power cells they'd managed to scavenge. When they were within 20 meters, Thorne gave a signal. He dropped his white flag and dove for cover behind a burned-out bus stop. The resulting explosions were not large enough to cause massive casualties, but they were perfectly placed. They shattered the checkpoint's energy shield generator, disabled its primary weapon turret, and scattered the Cylosian soldiers in a shower of crystal and debris. Thorne's team didn't stick around to fight. They disappeared into the maze of buildings while the aliens were still trying to process the flagrant violation of the most sacred law war. Supreme Commander Kale received the report with a surge of something he hadn't felt in centuries. Cold, pure anger. "They use surrender flags to trick us. This is a violation of every principle of the Covenant. It is an act of dishonor that defies comprehension." "Perhaps they do not know the laws," Lyric suggested cautiously, though he knew it was a weak argument. "Then we must teach them," Kale snapped. But deep inside, a new and unsettling emotion was taking root. Worry. In all his years of conquest, no enemy had ever fought like this. The humans did not seem to have any rules at all. They fought with a terrifying, adaptive creativity that his rigid, orderly mind could not easily process. The next morning brought more surprises. The humans had somehow gotten into the Cylosian supply depot during the night. They did not steal anything. Instead, they left behind small, jury-rigged devices that emitted piercing, atonal music and flashing, strobing lights. The noise and disorienting light show kept the Cylosian troops awake and gave away their positions to any human within a click. Private Kate Young, a schoolteacher before the invasion, had organized the strangest intelligence network in military history. She worked with the residents of Sunset Village, a retirement community on the edge of town. These elderly humans had lived through conflicts on Earth and other colonies. They knew how to watch and listen without being noticed. 70-year-old Martha Webb sat on her porch every day, knitting and watching the Cylosian patrols. She memorized their schedules and routes with the precision of a master tactician. Then she would walk her small dog, a fluffy creature named General, past other houses, stopping to chat with neighbors. By evening, Kate Young had a complete report on all enemy movements in her sector, delivered in a code based on knitting patterns. The Cylosians never suspected the old woman with the knitting needles was a spy. In their culture, elderly beings retire from all service, including war. It was inconceivable that they would use their grandparents as soldiers. But the incident that truly shocked Supreme Commander Kale happened 2 days later. Sergeant Thorne had been planning it for days. He chose another team of volunteers. The plan was simple but horrible by Cylosian standards. Thorne's team would once again pretend to surrender, this time with a larger force, to draw out a significant Cylosian response. They approached a major Cylosian command post at dawn. They walked slowly with their hands up and white cloths tied to sticks. The Cylosian soldiers saw the surrender flags and felt a sense of relief. The conflict was finally returning to a civilized resolution. "We give up," Thorne called out, his voice projected through a stolen Cylosian amplifier. "No more fight. We surrender." The Cylosian commander, a high-ranking officer named Subcommander Vex, stepped forward with an honor guard. This is proper procedure, Vex thought, his internal light patterns calming. Accept the surrender. Treat prisoners with respect. Report to Supreme Commander Kale. You have chosen wisely, Vex communicated. The hegemony shows mercy to those who surrender with honor. Thorne nodded and kept walking closer. Hidden under his jacket was a trigger for a dozen charges his team had placed in the surrounding buildings over the past 2 nights. They weren't planning to die. They were planning to bury the Cylosians. When Thorne got within 10 meters of the Cylosian commander, he gave the signal. Now! The explosions were not just at ground level. They came from above, from the sides, from below. The entire block, already weakened by previous fighting, collapsed in on itself. Subcommander Vex and his entire command staff were buried under tons of rubble. Thorne's team, having used pre-planned escape routes through the sewers, melted away into the city's underbelly. Vex survived, his crystalline form cracked and his light patterns flickering erratically, but he was badly injured. As he was pulled from the wreckage, he could only repeat one phrase over and over, his mental projections a jumble of confusion and betrayal. They carried surrender flags. Surrender flags mean safety. They broke the most sacred law of war. When Supreme Commander Kale heard the report, his anger crystallized into a hard, cold resolve. Contact the Galactic Council immediately, he ordered. These humans are not merely ignorant. They are dangerous criminals who reject the very foundation of civilized society. They must be stopped. Lyric hesitated. Supreme Commander, the Council will ask what we have done to teach them proper warfare. Perhaps we should try to educate them first. How do you educate savages? Kale snapped, his voice echoing with a rare, sharp resonance. They fight without honor. They use children and elderly as soldiers. They lie during surrender. These are not civilized beings. They are a chaotic plague that must be contained before it spreads. But the humans had more surprises waiting. They were just getting started. Book 2, The Echoes of Earth. Chapter 5, The Unseen War. 3 weeks had passed since the Cylosian invasion began. Supreme Commander Kale controlled the major administrative buildings and the main transit arteries of Olympus, but that was all. The city itself, the vast, sprawling, chaotic entity, remained defiantly human. The resistance fought from everywhere else. They hid in the sewer network, in the ancient, overgrown ruins that predated a colony, in the basements and attics of buildings the Cylosians thought they controlled. Every morning brought new, incomprehensible problems. Today, Kale stared at a report that made no sense. His communications officer, a young Cylosian named Zelik, looked nervous as he explained, "Supreme Commander, the humans are using something called video games to send messages. Our code breakers cannot understand how it works. The data streams are recreational in nature." Kale rubbed his forehead with one of his articulated hands, the motion producing a soft, scraping sound. Video games. What are those? Entertainment software for children, sir, Zelik replied. But somehow they hide military information inside the games. Our analysts believe it is some form of steganography, but we cannot isolate the military data from the recreational content. The truth was simpler than the Cylosians realized. Corporal Ryan Adams had been a computer programmer before the war. He discovered that the local teenagers, in an act of breathtaking normalcy, still played online games together even during the invasion. Their favorite was a futuristic combat simulator called Starfall Marauders. Ryan taught them to use the game's public chat channels and voice comms to pass information about Cylosian movements. 16-year-old Bobby Martinez would log into his favorite game and chat with friends across the city. "Hey, the blue guys are moving north on Main Street," he would type into the chat, while his character simultaneously blew up a virtual spaceship. Other players knew that blue guys meant Cylosian soldiers. Main Street was a code for a specific supply route. The alien code breakers, looking for complex military ciphers, studied these messages for hours. They analyzed the game's code, the player's strategies, the virtual combat data. They never thought that blue guys actually meant blue guys. Meanwhile, Private Kate Young's intelligence network had expanded. The Sunset Knitters now had cells in every major neighborhood. They were the eyes and ears of the rebellion, reporting on everything from patrol routes to supply deliveries, all hidden in plain sight within the mundane rhythms of daily life. Martha Webb's knitting patterns now included complex algorithms for predicting Cylosian troop movements based on observed patterns. The incident that truly shattered the Cylosians' remaining confidence happened on a quiet Tuesday morning. It was an act of sabotage so simple, yet so profound, it struck at the very heart of their identity. A Cylosian engineering team was working to repair their primary communication array, a massive crystal spire that had been damaged in Thorn's surrender attack. The work was delicate and required immense precision. They did not notice the human watching from a nearby ruined office building. Corporal Danny White had been a sound engineer and audiophile before the war. He understood audio equipment and acoustics intimately. While the Cylosians worked, Danny snaked a fiber optic cable through the rubble and connected a small, custom-built device to their main broadcast system. The device was powered by a car battery and contained a single solid-state drive. That evening, every Cylosian communication channel in the city, from their helmet comms to their command center speakers, started playing human music. Not just any music. Danny had chosen the most discordant, emotionally chaotic, and culturally alien pieces he could find. He had compiled a playlist of 20th century rock and roll, 21st century experimental electronic music, children's nursery rhymes sung in off-key choruses, and recordings of thunderstorms and laughing hyenas. The Cylosian soldiers tried to shut it off, but the signal was everywhere. Their helmet comms blared AC/DC. Their tactical displays played Baby Shark. Their weapon systems announced target locks with the sound of cows mooing. The effect was psychological warfare of the highest order. To the Cylosians, who valued silence, order, and pure communication, the cacophony was a form of torture. Worse than the music was the laughter. Danny had layered in recordings of human children playing, their squeals of delight and uninhibited laughter cutting through the noise. To a species that took warfare with the utmost seriousness, the sound of joy during battle was deeply, existentially disturbing. Specialist Rachel Kim, a former marketing student, added to the psychological pressure, with her propaganda campaign. She knew that Cylosian society valued order, logic, and predictability above all else. Rachel created flyers that she and her team of artists scattered around Cylosian positions. The flyers were surreal and nonsensical. One showed a human soldier grinning while surrounded by explosions, giving a thumbs up. The text read, "Thanks for the target practice. We're getting much better." Another flyer showed a group of elderly humans playing bingo, with Cylosian ships on the bingo cards. The message said, "We had bigger challenges than you. Last week's pot roast was a real nightmare." The Cylosian soldiers found these flyers everywhere, taped to their sleeping pods, slid under the doors of their command centers, even, in one baffling instance, replacing the nutritional paste labels in their food dispensers. The humans seemed to be able to get into any location they wanted, not with force, but with a baffling, invisible impunity. Supreme Commander Kale tried to understand the human psychology by studying captured materials. He found human books, history texts, military manuals, even fiction, about warfare. What he read horrified him. These creatures had been fighting each other for thousands of years on their home planet. They had developed every conceivable method of killing and destroying. They had written philosophical treatises on the ethics of conflict. They had created art and music about battles. But worse than their violence was their attitude. The humans seemed to not just endure conflict, but to thrive in it. They wrote songs about famous battles. They told stories about heroes who defied impossible odds. They played games that simulated warfare for fun. War was not just something they did when necessary. It was something they had integrated into their very culture. "Supreme Commander," reported Lieutenant Colvith, his light patterns dim with confusion, "we have intercepted human communications. They are not planning a retreat or negotiation. They are planning more attacks." "What kind of attacks?" Kale asked. "We cannot tell, sir. They use code words that make no logical sense. They talk about block parties, barbecues, and game nights, but our scouts report increased activity around our supply lines and critical infrastructure." Kale realized the humans were using their own language and culture as a living code. Words that meant one thing to humans, barbecue, for instance, were completely untranslatable in a military context to the aliens trying to decipher them. A block party wasn't a social gathering. It was a coordinated attack on an entire city block. Colonel Rostova sat in her underground command post, reading reports from her scattered units. The aliens controlled the surface, but the humans controlled everything else. The tunnels, the sewers, the rooftops, and the hidden bunkers formed a second, invisible city that the Cylosians never saw. "How are our supplies?" Rostova asked her quartermaster, a former grocer named Mr. Henderson. "Better than theirs, ma'am," came the reply. "The civilians are the supply line. Every house is a depot. Every family is a courier network. My old competitors are now my best suppliers. We're sharing more efficiently now than we ever did in peacetime." This was another thing that confused the Cylosians. In proper warfare, armies and civilians were distinct entities. Military forces protected civilians, and civilians stayed out of the fighting. But human civilians were not just supporting the army. They were the army. Retired mechanics fixed weapons in their garages. Chefs cooked meals for soldiers in their kitchens. Teachers used their schools as command posts and communication hubs. Children carried ammunition in their school backpacks. The entire human population was fighting, even if they never picked up a gun. As the third week ended, Supreme Commander Kale admitted the truth to himself. His forces were not losing in the traditional sense. They held the important buildings and controlled the main roads, but they were not winning either. The humans had turned the entire colony into a battlefield where normal military rules did not and could not apply. Every building could hide enemies. Every civilian could be a spy. Every act of kindness could be a trap. Every surrender could be a prelude to an ambush. For the first time in his long and distinguished military career, Supreme Commander Kale was fighting an enemy that refused to be defeated in any way he understood. And he was starting to fear that the Cylosian Hegemony had not picked a fight with a primitive species, but with something far more dangerous and adaptive than they had ever imagined. Chapter 6, The Mediator's Dilemma. The Galactic Council Chambers, a vast space where representatives from over 100 species floated in levitating pods, buzzed with worried voices. They were all discussing the same problem. The reports from Supreme Commander Kale had reached the highest levels of galactic government. Something was very wrong on the human colony world. Mediator Kalen, a tall, slender being from the planet Xylos, studied a complaint filed by the Cylosian Hegemony. Her species, known for their empathic and diplomatic abilities, had evolved to perceive the emotional and logical resonance of others. In her 400 years of service, she had never felt anything like the dissonant chord coming from Kale's reports. The accusations made no logical sense. They claimed the humans used children as soldiers. Kalen said to her assistant, a small, furry creature named Pip who chirped in response, but also say the children attend school between missions. How can this be? Perhaps the translation is flawed. Mediator. Pip chirped, his large eyes blinking. The Cylosian language has 47 different words for honor. Maybe their meaning is lost. Kalen looked at more complaints. The humans supposedly used surrender flags to launch attacks. They turned civilian areas into military zones. They employed elderly beings and the infirm as intelligence gatherers. None of it made sense according to the Galactic Covenant of Warfare, which had brought stability to the galaxy for a millennium. I must go to this colony myself. Kalen decided. Someone is not telling the whole truth, and I need to see it for myself. The mediator's ship, the Consensus, arrived at Veridian Prime 5 days later. Kale met her at a landing pad, which was now a heavily fortified fortress. The Cylosian Supreme Commander looked tired and frustrated. His crystalline form, usually polished and gleaming, was dull, and his internal light patterns flickered erratically. Mediator Kalen, thank you for coming, Kale said, his mental voice strained. These humans are an anomaly. They reject the Covenant. They must be stopped before their chaotic methods spread to other worlds. I am here to investigate, not to adjudicate, Kalen replied carefully, projecting an aura of calm. I will speak with both sides before making any judgments. The first meeting was held in a damaged amphitheater that had once been used for public concerts. Colonel Rostova arrived with two of her officers, the grizzled Sergeant Marcus Thorne and the brilliant, unassuming mechanic Lisa Stone. They wore simple, practical uniforms and carried basic, rugged weapons. Kalen expected to see primitive savages who did not understand civilized warfare. Instead, she met calm, intelligent beings who spoke clearly and answered questions directly. Their emotional resonance a complex mix of defiance, weariness, and grim determination. Colonel Rostova, Kalen began, her voice gentle. Supreme Commander Kale says your forces do not follow the Galactic Covenant of Warfare. Can you explain this? Rostova looked confused. What's the Galactic Covenant of Warfare? We never heard of it before these aliens showed up and started telling us how to fight a war on our own planet. It is a standard set of rules that govern warfare between civilized species, Kalen explained. It ensures that conflict remains structured and that unnecessary suffering is avoided. Well, we're not members of your civilized club, Sergeant Thorne grunted. We've been fighting for survival on our own for a long time. We developed our own ways of doing things. Kalen pulled out a data pad and began reading from the Covenant. Article 7 states that military forces and civilian populations must remain separate during conflicts. Your people violate this law. Lisa Stone laughed, a short, sharp sound. That's the stupidest thing I ever heard. When someone invades your home, everyone fights back. That's just common sense. My grandmother can reload a rifle faster than anyone I know. You want me to tell her she has to sit this out because it's against the rules. Article 12 requires that surrender offers be genuine and honored by both sides. Kalen continued, ignoring the outburst. Sure, Rostova nodded. If we really surrender, we mean it, but we might lie to trick the enemy into a vulnerable position. That's called strategy. Kalen felt a chill run through her empathic senses. The humans were not lying. They genuinely believed this. You admit to lying during warfare. Of course, Thorne said. Deception saves lives and wins battles. Sun Tzu, one of our ancient military philosophers, wrote that all warfare is based on deception. It's foundational. The mediator spent the next hour going through various articles of the Covenant. Each time, the humans either had never heard of the rule or thought it was foolishly naive. They seemed genuinely surprised that other species fought wars with such restrictive, self-imposed handicaps. "Let me understand this correctly," Rostova said finally, leaning forward. "You people have rules that make war fair and predictable?" "Yes," Kalen replied. "The Covenant ensures that conflicts remain civilized and that both sides can retain their dignity. But war isn't supposed to be fair or dignified," Lisa Stone said, her voice filled with genuine bewilderment. "It's supposed to end as quickly as possible with your side winning and your people still alive. That's the whole point. Everything else is just sentiment." Kalen requested a demonstration of human military capabilities. What she saw shocked her to her core. Lisa Stone showed her improvised weapons made from farming tools, kitchen knives, and cleaning chemicals. Everything could become a weapon in human hands. Sergeant Thorne arrived with 3 children from the local school. The kids, none older than 12, demonstrated how they used their bicycles to carry messages between adult fighters. They had memorized code words based on their favorite cartoon shows and knew how to spot Cylosian patrol patterns. "This is Tommy, Sarah, and Ben," Thorne explained. "They're our best scouts because the aliens never suspect kids. They're invisible." Young Tommy smiled at the mediator. "Want to see my slingshot? I made it from stuff in my mom's garage. I can hit a Cylosian's eye lens from 50 yards. It makes a neat tink sound." Kalen stared at the child in horror. "You fight in battles?" "Not really fight," Tommy replied. "I just watch the aliens and tell the grown-ups where they go. And sometimes I throw rocks at their vehicles to make a loud noise and distract them while the grown-ups do the important stuff." The demonstration continued with more disturbing revelations. Elderly humans who could barely walk served as lookouts from their windows. Shopkeepers sold supplies to resistance fighters while smiling at Cylosian customers. Teachers ran communication networks from their classrooms. Every human was part of their military. "Every human is part of your military?" Kalen asked, her empathic senses reeling from the sheer, integrated will of the community. "Every human is part of our community," Rostova corrected. "When the community is threatened, everyone helps however they can. It's what we do." That evening, Kalen met with Supreme Commander Kale to discuss what she had learned. The Cylosian Supreme Commander looked even more tired than before. "Now you see what I face," Kale said, his light patterns dim. "They have no honor, no rules, no civilization. They fight like wild animals." "They are not animals," Kalen said slowly, her mind racing. "They are something much more complex. Tell me, Supreme Commander, how does the Cylosian hegemony usually conquer new worlds?" "We land our forces, demand surrender, fight a clean battle against their army, and accept their submission," Kale replied. "The process takes a few days at most. And the conquered species always have armies that fight like yours." "Of course. All civilized beings follow the Covenant. We line up, announce our attacks, fight with honor, and the losing side surrenders properly. It is the only logical way." Kalen spent the next 3 days studying human military history using their own digital archives. What she discovered was terrifying. These beings had never fought clean wars. Their entire species had evolved through constant, brutal conflict with each other. They had developed strategies for fighting in cities, forests, deserts, mountains, jungles, and even underwater. They had used poison, fire, explosions, disease, and psychological terror. They had rules about when to break rules. They studied the art of deception the way other species study mathematics. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to find a dark meaning in the challenge. Human soldiers told jokes during battles. They sang songs about famous defeats as well as victories. They competed with each other to see who could be more creative in combat. They had turned survival into an art form. Colonel Rostova, Kalen said during their final meeting, "Do your people understand that war is supposed to be a last resort?" "Sure," Rostova replied. "We try to avoid fights when we can. But once a fight starts, we fight to win by any means necessary." We don't see the point in drawing it out to make it civilized for the people trying to kill us. What if following the Galactic Covenant would prevent wars from starting? Kalen asked. Rostova thought about this for a moment. Mediator, let me ask you something. How many wars has your galactic community had in the last 100 years? Kalen consulted her records. 47 major conflicts and over 200 minor ones. And how many did your covenant prevent from happening? Well, none. Actually, Kalen admitted. It didn't prevent them, but it made them more structured and minimized unnecessary suffering. Right, Rostova nodded. So your rules don't stop wars. They just make them longer and more predictable. Our way might be messier, but it ends conflicts faster. And in our experience, the longer a war goes on, the more people suffer. So who's really being more humane? On her final day, Kalen witnessed something that would haunt her for years. A group of human children was playing in the schoolyard while Cylosian patrols walked nearby. The kids had invented a game where they pretended to be soldiers fighting aliens. But this was not simple play fighting. The children used sophisticated tactics. They set up ambushes using the playground equipment. They created diversions. They coordinated complex attacks on each other using hand signals and whisper code words. They had learned advanced military strategy just by watching the adults. An 8-year-old girl named Lucy explained her team's battle plan to Kalen. She spoke about flanking maneuvers and supply line disruption with the casual confidence of a trained officer. Are you planning to become a soldier when you grow up? Kalen asked her. Lucy looked confused. I already am a soldier. Everyone is. That's how you protect your family. Kalen returned to her ship that night and began writing her report to the Galactic Council. Her hand shook as she typed. The humans were not violating the laws of war out of ignorance or barbarism. They had never agreed to those laws because they had never needed them. While other species had developed warfare as an extension of their civilization, humans had developed civilization as a way to control their natural, terrifying talent for warfare. They were not brutal savages. They were efficient survivors who had spent millennia perfecting the art of conflict. They were not evil. They were pragmatists to a degree the galaxy had never seen. The report's conclusion was simple but terrifying. Humanity represented a form of warfare that the galaxy had never encountered and was completely unprepared to handle. They did not break the rules of war because they were malicious. They broke the rules because, from their perspective, the rules themselves were a suicidal luxury. As her ship prepared to leave Veridian Prime, Kalen looked down at the colony lights twinkling in the darkness. Somewhere down there, human children were learning tactics that would have impressed ancient galactic generals. Elderly humans were planning operations that defied logical prediction, and a mechanic was building a weapon out of a toaster and a power cell that might just change the course of the war. The galaxy had a lot to learn, and humanity, she feared, was about to be a very strict and very dangerous teacher. Book 3, The Harmony of Chaos. Chapter 7, The Breaking Point. The Galactic Council chamber had never seen such chaos. Representatives from dozens of species shouted at each other while Mediator Kalen stood at the center podium trying to maintain order. Her report on the human colony had shaken the foundations of galactic civilization. This is impossible, declared Ambassador Cred of the Hegemony States, a species known for their rigid adherence to protocol. No species can survive without a proper military structure. These humans must be lying about their capabilities. It is a trick. The evidence is clear, Kalen replied, her voice steady despite the storm of conflicting emotions she was sensing. I witnessed their methods personally. They have created a form of warfare that makes every civilian a potential combatant and every location a potential battlefield. They have weaponized their own culture. High Chancellor Morgoth, the eldest member of the Council, a being whose species lived for millennia, raised his hand for silence. His ancient voice, translated through a resonator, carried the weight of centuries. If this report is accurate, we face a threat unlike any in recorded history. Not a military threat, but a philosophical one. We must decide how to respond. The debate raged for hours. Some species wanted to declare humanity a galactic threat and organize a massive military response to pacify them. Others suggested trying to educate humans about proper warfare, a notion Kayla knew was futile. A few radical voices even proposed studying human methods to improve their own military effectiveness, a suggestion that was met with horrified silence. Finally, the council agreed to a compromise. They would invite human representatives to explain themselves, not to a battlefield, but to the council itself. Admiral Helena Wolf received the invitation at Earth's Orbital Defense Station, Aegis. She was a woman in her late 50s with sharp gray eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that had been forged in decades of fighting pirates and corporate enforcers in the outer systems. "They want us to come to the Galactic capital and explain why we fight wars wrong," Admiral Wolf told her aide, Commander Rickstone. "Should I laugh or start prepping my fleet for a fight?" "Maybe both, ma'am," Stone replied with a wry grin. "I'll prep the diplomatic shuttle and load it with a full security detail. Something tells me this won't be a friendly chat." 3 days later, Admiral Wolf stood before the Galactic Council via holographic projection. She wore her dress uniform, a simple, dark affair adorned with medals from various human conflicts, not for gallantry, but for campaigns successfully concluded. Behind her, the stars of human-controlled space provided a backdrop that subtly reminded everyone she was speaking from her own territory. "You wanted to talk," Admiral Wolf said, her voice calm and clear. "So talk." High Chancellor Morga cleared his throat. "Admiral Wolf, we have received disturbing reports about human military practices. It appears your species does not follow accepted standards of civilized warfare as laid out in the Covenant." "What standards?" Admiral Wolf asked. "We never agreed to any standards. You people have been playing galactic politics for 1,000 years while we've been fighting for survival in isolated systems, dealing with things you've never even heard of. We didn't get the memo. The Galactic Covenant warfare has governed conflict for over 1,000 years," Mediator Kalen explained gently. "It ensures that conflicts remain structured and that unnecessary suffering is minimized." Admiral Wolf laughed, a sound that made several alien representatives flinch. "Let me get this straight. You have rules that make warfare more comfortable for the people doing the conquering? You want a nice, clean fight so you can feel good about yourselves afterwards. The Covenant protects non-combatants and maintains honor between opposing forces," Ambassador Kretz said with dignity. "Honor?" Admiral Wolf shook her head. "There's no honor in getting your people killed because you followed a rule your enemy doesn't care about. There's only winning and losing. Everything else is just pretty words that get good people killed." She gestured to someone off-screen, and new data appeared on the Council's displays. Battle reports, casualty figures, and conflict duration statistics from human history and from the Cylosian invasion filled their screens. "This is what your civilized warfare looks like," Admiral Wolf continued. "Your average war, according to your own records, lasts 18 months and kills millions of beings. You drag out conflicts because you're more worried about following rules than ending the fighting. Our way is messy. It's brutal, it's terrifying, but it's fast, and it saves lives in the long run because the other side either gives up or is no longer able to fight." Meanwhile, on Veridian Prime, the situation had deteriorated beyond Supreme Commander Kale's worst nightmares. Colonel Rostova's forces had begun using psychological warfare tactics that were breaking the Cylosians' collective will. Corporal Danny White had expanded his audio warfare program. Now he broadcast not just music, but human laughter through hijacked Cylosian communication systems at random intervals. The sound of children giggling would suddenly interrupt serious military conversations. A stand-up comedy routine would blast from weapon systems during tense patrols. The effect was maddening, but worse than the noise was what the humans called aggressive cheerfulness. Whenever Cylosian soldiers encountered human civilians, the humans would smile, wave, and act happy to see them. They would offer them water, ask about alien culture with feigned curiosity, and generally behave as if the invasion was a friendly, if inconvenient, visit. This behavior confused and unsettled the Cylosian troops more than open hostility would have. They were trained to handle angry enemies, not cheerful ones who treated warfare like a bizarre social event. Specialist Rachel Kim had perfected her propaganda campaign. Her latest flyer showed pictures of human families having picnics in a park while a battle raged in the background. The message read, "Thanks for visiting Veridian Prime. Sorry about all the shooting. Hope you enjoy your stay. P.S. The weather's lovely this time of year. Another series of flyers feature human children's drawings. The drawings showed smiling, round-headed humans and smiling, geometric Cylosians playing together. The innocent artwork was deeply disturbing to Cylosian soldiers who knew those same children were probably gathering intelligence on their movements. The psychological pressure was breaking down Cylosian discipline. Soldiers jumped at unexpected sounds. They became paranoid about friendly civilians. Some began having nightmares about human children laughing at them while they slept. Supreme Commander, reported Lieutenant Kelks during the morning briefing, his light patterns a mess of anxiety. 3 more soldiers requested transfers off-world yesterday. They cited psychological trauma and an inability to process the illogical nature of the conflict. Kale understood the feeling. He had begun having strange dreams about human warfare. In one dream, he was fighting an army of smiling humans who apologized politely while shooting at him. In another, human children were teaching his own troops how to break Cylosian military regulations using playground games. The breaking point came not from a soldier, but from a scientist. Dr. Aristhorn, Marcus Thorne's younger brother, was a xenobotanist. He had spent his life studying Veridian Prime's ecosystem. He knew the planet's flora and fauna better than anyone. He also knew that the Cylosians, with their crystalline bodies, were fundamentally based on silicon and resonant energy frequencies. And he knew of a local lichen that, when processed correctly, emitted a specific harmonic frequency that could disrupt crystalline structures. It was a long shot, but the entire human defense was a series of long shots. With Lisa Stone's help, Eris built a series of small, low-power emitters. They weren't weapons, not in the traditional sense. They were just tuners. The plan was to distribute them throughout the city and, at a designated moment, have them all broadcast the same harmonic frequency. It wouldn't kill the Cylosians, but it would be like a constant, unbearable, high-pitched noise in their minds. It would make it impossible for them to communicate, to focus, to even think straight. The attack was not an assault. It was an orchestration. On the 40th day of the invasion, at exactly 0800 hours, the emitters activated. For the Cylosians, the world dissolved into a single, piercing, agonizing note. Their internal light patterns went haywire. Their communication channels became a wall of static. Their ability to command and control their forces evaporated instantly. It was not pain in the physical sense, but complete and total sensory overload. And that's when the humans attacked, not with a grand army, but with 1,000 tiny cuts. Marcus Thorne's squads emerged from the sewers to hit disabled Cylosian patrols. Lisa Stone's sabotage teams, moving through the chaos, planted charges on disabled vehicles. These sunset knitters directed civilians to create diversions, setting small, contained fire to draw attention away from the main attacks. Supreme Commander Kale stood on the bridge of the clarity of purpose, his mind reeling from the harmonic assault. He watched his tactical display dissolve into a meaningless swirl of red icons and static. His perfect, ordered army was suddenly blind, deaf, and dumb. And the humans, the chaotic, unpredictable humans, were swarming over them. It was not a defeat. It was a deconstruction. Chapter 8, A New Kind of Order. When the harmonic frequency was turned off 6 hours later, the Cylosian forces on Veridian Prime were no longer an army. They were a collection of scattered, disoriented individuals. Their equipment was damaged. Their chain of command was broken. Their will to fight was gone. Kale knew it was over. He had lost. Not in a way he could comprehend or report, but he had lost. He sent a communication to Colonel Rostova, not a demand for surrender, but a simple request, a meeting. They met in the ruins of the Olympus City Hall. Rostova arrived with Marcus Thorne and Dr. Aristhorn. Kale was accompanied only by Lyric. There were no guards, no grandstanding, just 4 beings in a shattered room, the dust of battle settling around them. Colonel Rostova, Kale began, his mental voice for the first time devoid of its usual commanding resonance. It was quiet, almost tired. I need to understand something. Your people fight without what we define as honor, without structure, without rules. Yet you are clearly not a dishonorable species. You protect your own. You show resilience. How is this possible? Rostova considered the question. Supreme Commander, you and I have different definitions of honor. To you, honor means following rules and fighting fairly, even if it leads to your destruction. To us, honor means protecting our people by any means necessary. It means ensuring our children have a future. The method is irrelevant. The outcome is everything. But you use deception, civilian involvement, and psychological warfare. Lyric interjected. These are not the tactics of honorable warriors. Says who? Aristhorn asked, speaking for the first time. Your people, we never agreed to your rules. We've been fighting for survival for a long time. We develop our own code. It's simple. Don't lose. Protect your family. Use whatever works. Don't give up. Kale felt something fundamental shift in his thinking. It was like a crystal realigning itself under pressure. And what happens when you win? What happens to the conquered? Rostova met his multifaceted gaze. We don't conquer. We've never been interested in it. We're too busy trying to survive. We build, we farm, we explore. We fight when we have to. We'd rather be left alone. That was the core of it. The Cylosian Hegemony was built on expansion, on bringing order to a chaotic universe. Humanity just wanted to be left alone to manage its own chaos. That night, Kale walked through the human city under escort from both Cylosian and human soldiers. He saw families sharing meals in homes where weapons were hidden under the floorboards. He saw children playing in the streets, their games now a complex mix of tag and military tactics. He saw elderly humans sitting on their porches, watching alien troops not with fear, but with a calm, appraising curiosity. The humans had not let the war consume their entire lives. They fought fiercely when necessary, but they also continued to live. They maintained their community bonds, cared for their families, and found humor in the darkest situations. It was a lesson in resilience that Cylosian military training had never taught. The next morning, Kale made his decision. He sent a message to Cylosian High Command requesting permission to withdraw his forces from Veridian Prime. The request was unprecedented. Cylosian forces did not retreat unless facing overwhelming military defeat. This was not a defeat. It was a failure to comprehend. The response came quickly. High Command demanded a full explanation for this unjustified and cowardly request. Kale spent 3 hours composing his reply, trying to explain concepts that Cylosian language barely had words for. He wrote about an enemy that could not be defeated because it refused to accept defeat. He described humans who treated warfare as just another problem to be solved with creativity and determination. He explained that the Cylosian hegemony had not attacked barbarians, but a different kind of civilization that was, in many ways, more advanced than their own. Not technologically, but philosophically. The final paragraph of his report was the hardest to write. The humans have taught me that there are many ways to achieve order in the universe. Theirs is not the rigid, predictable geometry of a crystal, but a complex, adaptive, and resilient order of a living ecosystem. Perhaps it is time for the Cylosian hegemony to learn new lessons rather than simply imposing old ones. 3 days later, permission to withdraw was granted. High Command also included new orders, forwarded from the Galactic Council after Kalen's report had been fully debated. Kale was to establish diplomatic contact with human leadership and begin negotiations for a formal treaty. The Cylosian hegemony was ready to treat humanity not as a target for conquest, but as an equal power. The withdrawal ceremony took place in the same meadow where Cylosian forces had first landed. Kale stood beside Colonel Rostova as their respective troops formed parallel lines. It was a sight that would have been impossible under traditional military protocol. But human influence had changed many things. Colonel Rostova, Kale said formally, on behalf of the Cylosian hegemony, I apologize for the invasion of your world. We acted on incomplete information and a fundamental cultural misunderstanding. Rostova nodded respectfully. Apology accepted, Supreme Commander, and I apologize for the psychological warfare. Some of my people got a little carried away with the creativity. A small, shared smile passed between them. Around them, soldiers from 2 different worlds watched an unprecedented moment in galactic history. A military conquest had ended not with victory or defeat, but with mutual respect and the beginning of understanding. As the Cylosian ships lifted off from Veridian Prime, Kale looked down at the human colony one last time. Lights twinkled in windows where families were settling down for another normal evening. The sounds of life, of music, of laughter, drifted up from the city. It was chaotic. It was unpredictable. It was illogical. And for the first time, Supreme Commander Kale saw it not as a flaw to be corrected, but as a different kind of harmony. The harmony of chaos. And he knew, with a certainty that reshaped his very being, that the galaxy would never be the same.